This is TWiT.
So today, this morning, 8 a.m. Pacific, Apple announced the new Mac Mini. Were there any surprises? The one thing people seem to be noticing is that the power button's on the bottom.
That's fun. I mean,
it's got to be somewhere.
I mean,
it's got to be somewhere, says Andy.
No,
it's got to be somewhere.
As someone has a stack of Mac Minis, it is a little bit inconvenient.
Yeah,
you know, like that's not. I mean, I don't really care. I know that people were talking about the
you never turn it off,
charger at the bottom of the mouse or whatever. I was kind of like, you know, I don't think about that ever. Like it, you know, like you put it in for lunch and walk away and come back 2 months later. You have to do this again. But the power on the bottom is a little bit of a bummer because I've got 4 of them stacked up, and it's kind of like, okay, now I'm going to have to, like, if I want to restart them, it's not as trivial.
That's true.
So,
yeah.
It looks like it's the same, roughly the same shape as the. It's like a short Mac Studio. Is that right?
Not, okay, so it's 2 inches high and 5 by 5, so it is half the size of the old Mac Mini in terms of volume, and quite a bit larger than the Apple TV. People
really
who are like, "Oh, is it like an Apple TV?" It's like, no, not really.
Small.
It's not that small.
It's probably not
a lot
quite
smaller.
half. Like it's 70, it's 80 versus 50. It's a little bit more than half. I mean, because it gets taller. It's like 5 by,
I think it's 100 square inches down to 50 square inches. I think it's actually about exactly half the volume of the Mac
we can
Mini.
Check.
Volume is weird, right? Because you're losing a lot in 2 of the dimensions.
I did the calculation. I think it's 80 versus 50, but it might not be. So it's not quite half. It feels like I was like, oh, it's half the size, and then I actually did the math to figure out, like, is it really half the size? And I was like, well. And for the reason I bring it up is that a lot of us are looking at it like, hey, this would be great if we're going to have a higher density solution for our servers. And no, it's completely doesn't make any sense anymore. like it's, you know, so like they definitely don't care about people using Mac Minis in a server environment. Like that was definitely not one of the things that they thought through in this
Mac
process.
Stadium uses a lot of them, right?
Yeah, we think that you could turn them sideways and stack 8 of them sideways across a 3U, but the density would be marginally higher, but not a lot higher. And it's like one of those things, like if it was a little shorter or a little smaller, like, you know, if it was just a little less on one dimension or another, we would get much higher density. Yeah. But right now we're not.
Right.
Do we know yet if it has
85 versus 50? So there you go, Alex. That's just so not quite half volume wise, but because it's slightly taller. Good math. Good mathing. Well done. A gold star to you, Mr. Lindsay.
I know how to use a calculator.
I did math. The problem I had is that I did not know how high the old one was, and it is a little taller, right? But it's much narrower now, and it's really interesting. So surprises that they did leave Ethernet on all of them, that it's got full HDMI, that it's got a headphone jack, although it's on the front. So depending on how you use your headphone jack, that could be more or less convenient. But I think it's great. It's 5 ports, including 2 on the front, which it was always like in these Johnny Ive days, it was heresy to put ports on the front, but they did it with a Mac Studio, so we knew it was coming.
And it's also a great way to separate that some of them are USB-C, some of them are Thunderbolt, so they know that the ones in the back are the Tabasco ones. The one in the front is for your keyboard.
In a nod to American made, they are an even 5 by 5 by 2 and some random amount of millimeters. You know, right? You know,
and it's like a 2 by 4. It's not really 2 by 4.
But somebody definitely decided that it had to be like even, like it's really easy to remember what they are, because they are like, because the last one was 1.41 high, and this one is
2. It's 5 by 5 by 2. It's like a little teeny tiny. If it was black, we can make it like a 2001 mini monolith. It takes you halfway to the end of time. Anyway, it's really interesting because it's a base model M4, but there's also the M4 Pro, which means this is the first time that we've seen that chip. The M4 Pro chip is, it's got more cores. I think it's got 8 performance and 4.
The memory bandwidth is 273 gigabytes per second.
This is I would say the most surprising single
4 performance, 6 efficiency cores on the bottom line, 8 performance and 4 efficiency cores on the Pro chip.
Right, 8 4, and the idea there is that's the 12 core is probably the full extent of the Pro chip, right? They have the bin versions, but that's the full extent of it with and a bunch of CPUs too. But the memory bandwidth, I think, is the real story here. With the M3 generation, when they rolled that out, we talked about it, that it was curious that the Pro was sort of like took a little step forward, and then the Max took a big step forward. And of course, we don't know anything about the Max chip yet because maybe tomorrow, right? Like, yeah, is it, what day is it? It's Tuesday. Well, then I don't know about other chips. But this one, like 75% generational improvement in memory bandwidth is huge. Like, that is a big step forward. So there was a small step forward for the Pro chip last time, but a huge step forward this time.
It's more than twice as much. I mean,
120 gigabits per second on the M4, 273 gigabits per second on the M4 Pro. They're clearly amazing. Not as much as they're making this cute little, like, tiny little computer. They are clearly not marketing this as, oh, here's the meet Maxi, your family, your cute little tiny little pocketable Mac. It is this is some serious crap, and serious stuff here.
And it's presumed that a studio will then be with the M4 Max.
Yeah. No, the studio bandwidth is already 400 gigs, and the Ultra is already 800 gigs. So these are already, I mean, these are the M2s that are there. So if we see any kind of proportional increase in their speeds, wow.
What does this memory bandwidth give you, Alex?
If you're moving a lot of data back and forth between things, you have to hold that data. It can be a huge stopper, especially with huge amounts of texture maps, or massive amounts of video, or massive amounts of scientific data, or massive amounts of 3D data, doing a variety of photogrammetry. All of these things kind of max out these systems as they start, and it really becomes a churn. So again, this gets back into what I was talking about. If I'm doing a bunch of effects on a bunch of on something in Resolve, and I've got a bunch of 6K or 8K footage, that bandwidth gets saturated pretty quickly, and so those are the kind of things that it will do well. I think that, again, it's not going to be, I mean, when you see these specs, you can't wait to see what the Studio and the Pro look like. But these, it's a really powerful machine. It's still not probably as powerful as, it's not. I don't think the top of the line here is competitive with the Studio, M Ultra or Maxes. But I do think that it is extremely fast I think the Mac Mini is the best bang for your buck for power,
absolutely,
of any computer made right now.
Yeah. I hope that it keeps the same role that it had historically, where there's always there's always been, if you are a power user but not necessarily someone who needs a Mac Pro, you can have the choice between buy a lower spec Mac Mini, but then do a build to order and give it all the RAM you want, give it all the storage you want, give it all the extra you want, get the best processor you want, or go for a low level Pro level machine. I hope that's still going to be kind of a distinction between, like, the Mac Studio and the Mac Mini, where there's going to be a very clear jump to get to a Mac Studio, including, like, 5 displays instead of 3, maybe a better fan. I'm assuming this Mac Mini has a fan. Looking at the side of it has vent holes. Okay, in the bottom, great. That was one small fear of mine, that they would say, well, we're going to have this throttled by heat performance, so that we don't really, so to make it fit that tight little space, we're going to have it all naturally cooled. But it would have been weird to have the same sort of features into a MacBook Pro that is absolutely going to have a fan. But yeah, I think this is, I'll speak for myself, I won't speak for you guys. So it's the Mac Mini I definitely want. And it's the one that I can kit out exactly how I want, because I don't need to spend $5,000 on the top of the line anything, but I have certain needs, and if I can suit them better with a $599 base model machine that I can then spec up to $1,500 than I can with, say, a $1,500 like Pro level machine. I think they've got that.
It could support 3 displays, which is nice. Also support for DisplayPort over USB-C. The Pro, actually, it looks like the M4 and M4 Pro have the same video support. Yes, maybe a little bit higher resolution on the M4 Pro. DisplayPort 2.1 over USB-C, HDMI, up to 8K resolution over HDMI at 60 hertz, 4K at 240 hertz. Wow.
It's not just the displays; it's the fact that these are a multiple of really good displays.
Yeah,
that's
high quality.
Pretty hot.
Yeah.
And Thunderbolt 5. I mean, that's the other thing, is it's Thunderbolt 5
So what is Thunderbolt 5?
Thunderbolt 5 on the Pro chip, faster speeds.
3 times faster than Thunderbolt 4.
Faster speeds, more power, and then you combine that with the video out is different because there are more GPUs, so you can do 6K at 60 or so there's a little bit more there.
8K at 60 and
it says 8K, yeah.
And you
can do one of each.
Two, and the it's 120. I think it's up to 120 gig pipeline. 80 is the base for it, and so you're talking about being able to move 10 gigabytes, theoretically 10 gigabytes a second, which is twice as fast as my studio does internally. This gets into, again, if you're editing or you're trying to get in and out of things, being able to have something that has that kind of bandwidth is pretty exciting. And where this makes a difference for a Mac Mini is if you want to build a distributed rendering platform. So I want to have 10 of these able to do a bunch of distributed processing. The speed at which you can deliver that content to the thing, that oftentimes is the biggest bottleneck that we get into, is actually sending the frames. So let's say you want 10 of these to run compressor, or you want 10 of these to run a 3D render. How fast can you get that data to the machine is a big deal. And being able to have this kind of speeds is pretty exciting. And again, if you're editing something really heavy, a Mac Mini of this size with 64 gigs of RAM can absolutely do all the big editing that I was just talking about with 6 channels of 6K, but it's the drive speed that kills you. And so being able to have the new, I imagine OWC within a couple months will be delivering things that can do 8 gigs or 10 gigabytes a second, and now you can stack up a lot of these things inside of whether it's Resolve or Final Cut or others. You can have a lot of really uncompressed data that you're working with. You don't have to do any kind of you don't have to burn anything in. Everything can be sitting there floating as you're working with it. So it's exciting. It's an exciting box. So
yeah. But obviously, if it can do that, then you might want to wait and see what the studio will do. Will the studio be this week or no? It'll be next year.
Next year. Mark Gurman says mid next year that it actually slipped a little bit. But it's really 4 computers, right? You've really got, based on the 4 different chip models, you've got 2 Mac Minis and 2 Mac Studios. And I was thinking about this, that I've got a Mac Studio now, the base model, which has got the M1 Max chip, and then there's also the Ultra, and let's assume that they're going to do an Ultra this generation for this, and then you've got the M4 and the M4 Pro. Like, where do you fall if you want a desktop system? And there will be maybe some crossover, but not in terms of the specs. You could spec up a Mac Mini Pro chip with a bunch of RAM and a bunch of storage and get it to be over what the starting price of the studio probably will be, but not with the specs that you want. So
I think $27.99 when I did.
I priced one for 25 or something like that. But the question is, who needs the higher end one? Like I'm not sure I need anything more than the M4 Pro Mac Mini.
Do you need anything more than the M1 Max? Let's be honest.
Well, it's true. Actually, that's the truth of it. If I did, I would have ordered a Pro Mini today. And the fact is, my M1 Mac Studio is still great, honestly. Yep. And so probably I'll just wait and see what the studio holds. But it's nice that they offer these things, because M4 base model is super powerful, and I know that it's got a little bit less storage than people would like and a little bit less RAM, although it's got 16 now, so that's good. Yeah. But it's still an incredible value. And then with the Pro chip, you have got a very powerful system. I have a friend of mine who works from home and is a creative professional in the film industry. And he texted me today and he was like, bought a Mac Mini because he had an old Intel iMac that was on its last legs. And this is a serious professional person. So like it's an impressive product on both fronts.